Okay, live audience coming in now. Welcome to everyone watching on YouTube. We'll just be a moment. Okay, welcome everyone. It's the top of the hour here, Eastern Time, 12 noon. And welcome to everyone across the globe here. I know we've got lots of you watching in from Canada as usual here on the CCTV Friday webinar, but also welcome to people in the United States. I noticed registrants from Australia, the continent of Africa, Germany, the UK. Welcome everyone. We always have an international audience for a Christopher Norton webinar, and we're happy to be joined as well by George Litterst of TimeWarp Technologies, with whom Conservatory Canada has a long relationship with the internet MIDI software for which we do online exams with. And Chris and George are going to talk today about Chris's essential guides, which were published many years ago by Boozy and Hawks. They'll give you all the background on that. We also hinted at it in a previous webinar you might want to watch back in the fall that's available on the CCTV YouTube channel. Welcome to everyone there who's watching live, and we're thankful to have a very large audience here on Zoom today. I'm Derek Auger, the Executive Director with Conservatory Canada. Welcome to the Friday webinar. We do this almost every Friday. Next Friday, a week from now, 168 hours from now, we'll be joined by Chris and George again. They're going to talk about Chris's micro jazz duet collections, and they'll mention that briefly maybe at the end of today, and you can all register for that if you haven't already. The week after that's Good Friday, so we're going to take that Friday off, and then we come back with a couple of webinars by Deborah Wanless later in April, talking about her Let's Begin piano series. That's next up on the docket. And then I have a little surprise that I'm working on in the background, a presentation I'll give to those that are interested that I'll advertise later. So thanks everyone for joining us. Chris and George, I'm going to turn this over to you. Thanks for being here today. We're looking forward greatly to see all about essential guides and all the different genres and styles that you're going to feature today.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody, if you're on the East Coast, and perhaps good morning if you're elsewhere in the world or later in the day. I'm George Litterst, speaking to you from a little town of Rehoboth, Massachusetts, and it's always a pleasure for me to be on screen here with my good friend Christopher Norton. It's his brilliant work that we're going to be talking about today, and I wanted to just tell you right up front, as we look at these covers of these books that we're going to be discussing, the essential guide to pop styles, to jazz styles, and to Latin styles, how important I felt these volumes to be as a piano teacher, particularly one who's come up through classical training. It's amazing how many styles and genres and subgenres there are in these various areas outside of classical music. And to have these resources with engaging little pieces to play that get one immersed into such a plethora of styles, it's really wonderful. So Chris, you first wrote these books way back when exactly?
I'd have to look them up, but I think in the late 90s. So although that doesn't sound that long ago, when you think about it, it's going to be at least 25 years ago. And they've been out all that time, and lots of people have told me how much they like them. But the presentation we're talking about today emphasizes the fact that there are backing tracks which were done for them originally, which have never been available before, and indeed are only available at this point on the SuperScore platform.
So the backing tracks make for a really interesting aspect to these, because they really are integral part of establishing what these different styles are all about, as we'll see going on. So in any case, we'll be showing you the material today in SuperScore. It's an application on the iPad. It's a free download from the App Store. Purchases are made inside of SuperScore in its store, and these are publications from Boozy and Hawks. But for those of you who may not have an iPad, it's nice to know that you can get the books in print. I understand that they are being republished in an updated edition coming out soon. But in the meanwhile, the older versions are available. So we're going to start by taking a look at the Essential Guide to Pop Styles. And it has a total of 34, I believe, styles within the book, and you're only seeing about 2/3 of them listed on this screen. The screen was getting too crowded to show them all, but we wanted to give you a sense for how broad the music is within the volume. So, Chris, why don't you talk about this a little bit? You've come up in each case with an original piece that illustrates each style and explanatory notes. What was your intentions here?
I was trying to do something which was kind of boiling down the essence of the style, you might say. There's a piano piece. Sometimes there's something with a piano plus a melody, or something with a bass part. And then the backing tracks were very integral to this, because when you play a style like reggae, or you play a style like soft rock, or whatever it might be, having the bass drum, the drums, the bass, the guitars and horns or whatever added really makes you feel like you're kind of getting a little snippet of the actual style. And so I think from memory, that I started off quite a lot of the time with these by talking to other musicians who play these styles, and also by listening to pieces that were in those styles, and then trying to write a piece based on what I was hearing. So I'm hoping that people will find these stylistically accurate, as it says on screen, and that the backing tracks give you a whole other dimension to these piano pieces.
And I think they also give a student a real opportunity to experience ensemble playing. And I can tell you, in the case of my own studio over the years, very, very often when I've had students getting into late middle school, into high school, they've wanted to be able to join the jazz band at school, or another group at school, as a keyboard player. And I think these materials are great preparation for this purpose. So we can only touch upon occasional pieces throughout these books today, because there are so many in each one. For the pop styles, we're going to be looking at blues, shuffle, big band piece, dance style, gospel, rock and roll, and thrash metal. We'll have to say something about that when we get to it. That's an interesting one. So if we start with blues shuffle, the point we should make is that here in SuperScore, you get everything that's in the printed book itself, and there are all of the 34 pieces listed. And then when you go to a particular piece, you'll find that it's prefaced with stylistic information that's very important for describing the piece. And there's even some suggested listening examples at the end of that little section. Chris, do you want to speak to what you're presenting here?
Yes. If I show you my piano here, and I'm just going to change this so you can hear me as well. And just going to check that again. Won't be a second. There we go. You're hearing that?
Yes.
So I've got my iPad here as well. So I'm dialing this piece up to have a look. The left-hand part, which is written down, which is the famous kind of bluesy walking bass, if you like, but the part above and the piece itself. But in the music example you see, I think, George, rather, I'm right in saying that you've got actually like a little keyboard accompaniment part to play there, not just the original piece, but you've actually got a little kind of vamping part to play, which I think the book often contains effectively a keyboard vamp thing, which you can play with the backing track. So that's just giving you a little snippet there to see how you can actually use the book and have a little play with an aspect of it. So let's go back to the piece now. So yeah, there we are. I've got that sort of vamping bit. Then you've got the on the drum part there. If you go to the next page, George, and the bass drum and snare drum are just doing a on-beat, off-beat. So if you actually got somebody else with a little primitive drum kit and actually played that vamping part on the first page, you could end up with sounding like quite a respectable beginning to the style, if you like. If you look at the styles that I mentioned, it's quite a lot of well-known pieces. I've also included some of the pieces which I've written myself. Galloping in Clockwork from the Microstyles collection, Steam Train Blues from Microjazz collection too. So you're getting examples from the Microjazz and Microstyles books as well as these very famous pieces. And in fact, as a child, my mother had, I think, 2 recordings at home. One of them was All Shook Up by Elvis Presley. The other was Burr Lives and the Korean Orphans Choir sing Christmas carols. So this takes me back to when I was an 8-year-old and my mother was playing All Shook Up on the little 45 at home. So here's the piece now, so you can have a look at the music and listen to how it sounds with the full backing.
And these pieces always start with a count off to facilitate playing along with the backing tracks. You'll hear the count off on this one, and the other ones that we show today, I'll skip the count off just to save time.
So you can see it's got quite a lot of personality there. The drummer's does a very sort of personality-driven fill at the end there. And the piece is not that long. And of course, on SuperScore, you can also play it at any speed you like. So if you wanted to play a bit slower, you can do that as well. And you can also isolate the parts. So you can hear just the drums, just the bass, just the guitar. There they all are. And then you've also got these rather wonderful tenor sax and baritone sax parts. So you can see there's a lot of fun to be had basically doing your own remixes of these pieces as well as playing the piano part.
So we have a big band piece.
Yes, now this has that very characteristic which is sometimes called the pea soup pattern. And it also got a 4-on-a-ball walking bass, which is the same as the previous piece in that sense. And the guitar will strum quarter note chords. You can see there's lots of kind of common sense observations about the style here. And then the use of syncopated figures against the straight rhythm can be seen in the piece. And a lot of use of close harmony as well. And I've got a little interesting thing here about the accents as well. But you can see the notes are quite, the push of snare drum accents might well be included, the places marked with a little bar there. And these lovely little light piano fills as well. Now, I'm not going to try and play any of the examples here, but if you go to the piece now, George, people can see at a glance. Now, this is an interesting one. You've got a bass part, and then you've also got the piano, and this is called a locked hand style. So you've actually got both hands playing in block chords, more or less the same as each other, with these lovely little fills like at bar 8 in this piece. So here's Big Band or Swing from the Essential Guide to Pop Styles. Now, when you're playing that with the backing track, you can tell that's quite a lot of fun, particularly at the end. There's very specific rhythmic figures to play. You've got to try and fit it all in with the band. And you're getting the real feeling of playing with a big ensemble and playing with a live drummer through playing this short piece. So I think you'd agree that these are both fun piano pieces to play, but also very stimulating in terms of learning how to play a particular style and what it feels like to play a particular style.
And Paul Jan is commenting that this was also popularized by George Shearing.
Absolutely. George Shearing is quite a subliminal influence on me, I think, a wonderful player. Now, this is an interesting one. Although this was a big thing in the 80s, dance as a style, if you like, is still around. You still hear a lot of this kind of style. It's influenced hip hop as well. And I've mentioned the fact that it uses a drum machine and small, dry artificial sounds and dramatic orchestral samples. That was a big feature of 80s dance, certainly. And this is played by a machine or sequencer, which is why the backing track is ideal for this, because in fact, it's all being played very metronomically with machinery. Now, there's a possible drum machine score. So you got the tambourine going, hi-hat going, and the snare drum, ba, 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 ba. So that's quite an influence of funk. It's got this kind of 16th note syncopation, and the bass drum, boom, boom. Yes, that's a funny one, isn't it? Boom, 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 boom. I'm not quite sure whether that's accurately written, actually. We may need to sort of amend that very slightly. One of the beauties of a digital edition, by the way, is if I discover anything which looks slightly odd, we can change it, and it's updated automatically when you get your part. Now, I'm going to switch my piano on again for this. So let me just bring my screen up. Here we go. And here's me with my sound. And again, I'm dialing up the thing on my little, this is dance, isn't it? So here we go. Yeah. So the left hand. So very straightforward left hand, but the right hand has this very characteristic dance rhythm. So I'm just kind of getting my way back into this groove because it's a long time since the 80s, but here we go. I'll just try it again. So that's quite a fun rhythm. It's quite a complicated rhythm to play in terms of syncopation, but when you actually put it with the backing, I think sometimes it suddenly becomes quite doable like this.
Oh, I lost my sound. Let me refresh the screen sharing. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why that happened.
So keep my piano sound in your back of your mind as we get the full sound to come up.
Oh dear, what's going on? Zoom is no longer doing its job. Whoa, this will take a moment to bring this back up again. Sorry.
This is not characteristic, by the way. But just looking at the screen here, by the way, that's the same all the way through, but the end of the piece has a wonderfully syncopated figure as well, which we'll hear in a moment. This is a very good example of something where if you decided to play it slower, it would still have the same effect. So if you find it a bit daunting to play it right up to the full speed, it's an opportunity to do that.
It's taking me a moment here to get, there we go. Okay, we do have sound again.
Here we go. Oh,
Whoops.
this is the next piece.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I quite like that one though. But here's dancing, and you can see how quick it is to get from one piece to another as well. So this is all fine and par for the course. Here we go. So there's that very syncopated figure at the end as well, which is a lot of fun to play. Sorry about the octaves, by the way. For smaller students' hands, you can always miss out the octaves at the very end.
I'll point out that this has this peculiar electronic sound in the backing tracks called orchestral hit, which actually came from, I believe, the Fairlight synthesizer in the early 80s, where they sampled an orchestra chord from Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, I believe. And particular sound is known as orchestra hit, and it's used in this style. So gospel, something different.
Yeah, no, this is has a reference to the Blues Brothers movie, a very fast moving style, and the bass walks 4 on a bar against a 2 on a bar drum feel. So when you get to the actual piece, you'll discover it runs at quite a lick. But it's the same thing again, though. On this SuperScore platform, you don't have to run it that fast if you want to kind of get used to how it feels. And then I've said the melody would be effective on Hammond organ, which is what we've used. So again, if I just go into my piano very quickly, so here you go. This is we're getting used to this device now. And I'm going to share my screen, computer audio. There we go. And I'm dialing up gospel. You can see how quickly you can kind of get used to how this all works. And oh yeah, this is great. The left hand and the right hand and so on. And then the middle bit. So that's pretty spectacular, isn't it? You put it all together with the particular drum feel and the Hammond organ sound, and you get pure gospel like this. Now, you've discovered already, haven't you, through looking at that, how SuperScore is an amazing medium because it does all your pages turning for you. And this one actually goes back quite quickly and then to the coda quite quickly. It will be a tricky one to turn manually. So that's another thing, which is a wonderful thing about this particular platform.
Well, I could also mention that if you know your music well, you might read it at a smaller size. And if you're playing the keyboard part and don't need to see the rock organ, you can get a little more screen real estate that way. So the number of ways to handle that matter. So one quick one here with rock and roll, and then we should probably move to the next book, Chris.
Yes. Okay. Well, again, if you look at the notes, the piano, right hand, and hi-hat play accented eighth notes throughout, you'll see what I mean when you get to the piece. This, instead of going on, off, the bass drum and snare have got a particular pattern. And then you've got brass playing the main theme for this. And you can see the piano's also got dung, 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 dung. So it's got this very distinctive left-hand pattern, which is accented with the eighth notes in the right hand. Here's my take on rock and roll. You've noticed, haven't you, that there are chord symbols in this book as well, and they're very useful to have. So you've just got a little bit of a sort of reference to the fact that there are ways of playing these using the chords in the backing track as well, and not necessarily reading the notes, but actually just following the chord patterns. And I'm giving you lots of chord positions, I think, which are giving you the chance to kind of learn what a good G7 might be. For instance, the one I'm looking at in bar 11 here is really a third inversion of G7 on the right hand. It's got an F on the bass in terms of the thumb note. So it's teaching quite a lot about positions and inversions and so on. So that's Essential Guide to Pop Styles, which is the first of our 3 books. We're going to go, yes, but there's one more to look at. I'm not going to say a lot about this, except to say I thought it was quite fun at the time. I worked with a very good heavy metal guitarist, and I decided to actually put a thrash metal piece in. This, as fast as possible, and then really slow and lumbering. And this is an amazing piece to try and play with a backing track like this. And even now, I defy you to find that many educational music books which actually have a thrash metal piece in them. So I think it's quite fun that some students will be very pleased to find this piece, I suspect.
So do you think that this questioning that the piece does is, which do we prefer, a perfect fifth or a tritone? Is that part of the style?
Exactly. It's a perfect fifth and tritone. And of course, in the middle section, the perfect fifth and the tritone are there both at the same time. So yeah, it's radical. It's quantum baby.
There you go. So we should take a look at some jazz styles. And you can see that there's quite a list of styles that are covered here in the Essential Guide to Jazz Styles. 28 in total. And as before, there's a illustration for every one of these and explanatory notes for the pieces. And Chris, I think you even give some suggestions for performance and improvisation, as well as some historical notes in the cover.
That's right. There are just sort of hints about chord playing and improvisation built into this as well. So it's a nice little handbook on the history of jazz, you might say, starting off with Dixieland and going right through to pretty much atonal jazz at the very end of the book. So it's a very wide-ranging book stylistically, this one.
So we're going to be looking quickly at 6 of them here, starting with Shed Blues.
And again, here are the notes. The notes on this gives the chord progression in Roman numerals, which is rather fun. And this is the first time where I've said, play this progression in the key of C, then in other keys. In other words, try learning the chords and then sing if you can do it in the key of D or the key of G or whatever. It's referring to blue notes, and the left hand of this is very straightforward. And again, I'll just do a quick shift to my piano here, and we're getting quite good at this, aren't we? So again, I'm going out of my into my albums here, and this is Essential Guide to Jazz Styles. It's very quick.
Switch the camera the other way.
Yes, I'll just switch the camera so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. There we go. And the left hand, very straightforward to play. With the right hand, so you can tell it's a very nice piece to play, just as a simple piano piece. It's only probably about grade 1 or grade 2. And here's what it sounds and looks like with the backing. Now, the full Dixieland band comes in. So you can tell there's quite a lot of my pieces might be written in this kind of simple bluesy style, but it's wonderful to have that authentic Dixieland backing as well. Now, the second piece we've got in this book is Hot and Tasty, is influenced by Django Reinhardt, and this is a very famous jazz violinist. And it's like all downstrums, it says on the acoustic guitar. You're playing on the beat all the way through with downstrokes. It's wonderful. And I've also got a little use of a particular scale here, which is one to try your own melodies out. So it's giving some simple improvisation tips during this, which you can do with the backing track. And there's a couple of examples there. And if you look at the accompaniment to this, you can see the left hand this time has actually got block chords, which are imitating the sound of full block chords on a guitar being played on the beat. And this lovely little tune at the top, which is played on the violin. And of course, I said it's played on the violin. It's played on the piano with the violin, doing all sorts of lovely jazz licks around the piano, which is rather fun. And again, because it's in MIDI, you could actually print off, in theory, the violin part and have a violinist play it. And of course, the other parts on this, George, you want to just show us what the parts are that are on the backing for this? You've got violin, 9-string guitar, acoustic bass, and drums, effectively. In fact, I'm wrong, aren't I? There's no drums in this one. It's just a counter, because in fact, the acoustic guitar provides all the rhythm section. So that's another sort of characteristic thing of this particular style. Now, this is a tribute to Count Basie. So this is getting into a big band style. You can tell this is a very authentic guide to jazz styles. This is a small band style with drums and basses. It says playing an important role, especially in marking certain key accents. And it says, try playing the chords only with a swing pattern from drums or drum machine acting as a metronome. In other words, not try and play the whole thing, but just play the chords. So if we have a look at the music for this, George, and see what the chords look like, look at that. So you'd actually play just the left hand, effectively. This is another one which has got this kind of on-beat style. And this is, I really like this tune. I mean, I wrote the tune, but I'm still, it's one that I particularly like as a tune. Here's what it sounds like.
And Chris, I'll just interject that you modeled this after Count Basie, and it really takes me back to, it was either the spring of 74 or 75.
I wouldn't have thought you were even born then, George. But anyway, go on.
When Count Basie was in his early 70s. I was in college, and he actually played for his whole orchestra and himself leading it.
Wow.
For a college mixer, a formal dance.
Yeah.
And to think that such a legendary person was doing college gigs all the way to the end is pretty amazing.
And that really has the flavor, doesn't it, of that style, that piece. It's got little Count Basie piano licks in it for a start.
Right. Now, when I look at the title of this next one, Chris, I've wondered, is this one of your more autobiographical pieces?
As it happens, no. It is. It's like a folie à jour. I'm trying to think why I call it that. It's just that Mingus came up with quite unusual titles for things. I thought it was quite fun to come up with something which was slightly kind of wasn't even an exact expression that exists. So it's a bit of a fun, but a folly. What is a folly? Is that like
I thought it was
a whimsy, like a
day.
whimsical thing? So a whimsical thing on the day, sort of thing. And the characteristics of Mingus Sistala here, the keys in F minor. It's a very whimsical melody and a very pungent harmonic language, and dramatic use of accents and instrumentation, trombone, alto, tenor, and baritone saxophones, sudden dynamics, drops and rises, and gleeful emphasis on any discords, which is quite funny. So if you just show me the music here, George, I'll just bring this up on my screen as well. Oh yeah. So again, there's my piano. Did I do that by accident? Anyway, what I like about this is the beginning. And then there's a lot of pungent chords in this, and the instrumentation emphasizes them, if you like. So you get a very characterful style, if you like, here. Lovely piano piece to play, not too hard, but when you bought the backing with it, it really is something. So it influenced quite a lot of music for spy movies, didn't it? That particular style with these, like the F minor 9 sharp 7 at the end. That's a very characteristic sound. So that's a very stimulating style. You can tell this is getting into much more kind of interesting territory harmonically. Now, Rhodes Scholar, the play on words here is, of course, the sound of the Fender Rhodes piano, which I used to have one back in the 70s. And they were a great favorite of players like Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, and the Jazz Crusaders, who I was particularly keen on at the time. And it's quite a simple style, this, and it's blues inflected and used short bluesy ideas and often featuring 2-note chords preceded by a grace note, as you'll see in the piece. And again, it talks about the improvisation a little bit, but you can tell this is a nice, straightforward little style with very characteristic stops. And if you tried to play this as a piano piece, you'd find that it really works nicely as a piece by itself. But again, it reveals quite a lot more when you try and actually play it with the other players playing with you. And don't you just love those page turns? That really makes the job easier for a performer when the program actually does that for you. Now, this is very interesting. This is one of my favorite jazz composers, is getting into the much more modern world of Pat Metheny, who I saw playing, in fact, in a wonderful concert in Leeds in the UK, probably about 15 years ago. And he didn't play one wrong note for a start, as well as having a wonderful sound. It's got some notes about the style here, and in fact, it was influenced by a wonderful player who died in 2020, Lyle Mays, and he was very wonderful piano player. Also used synthesizers very interestingly. So have a look at the music of this here, and you can see this is emphasizing quite a lot just the sort of sensual effect of particular chords, and the chords which I really like as a chord myself is this use of the C5. A C5 means a C major chord with no third, basically. There's actually a second as well. So you might say that it's got a C5 added second. But you'll hear these are very characteristic sonorities which are underpinned by the sound of the guitar on the sequence, was actually quite like the sound of Pat Metheny. Nowhere near as good as Pat Metheny's sound. Nobody is better than him, but nonetheless, it's giving you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to play with somebody with this kind of guitar sound. Yes, that's very Pat Metheny still to my ear, which is nice to have. Now, George.
So we should move ahead to the essential guide to Latin styles, of which, again, there's an amazing number. In your book, you've got 24 of them, each, again, illustrated with a composition and explanatory notes, similar to what we've seen with the other books. And we're going to take a look at Beguine, Bolero, Bossa Nova, Merengue, Nanigo, and how do we pronounce the last one, Chris?
Son Montuno, at a guess. I worked on this, by the way, with a very, very good Latin American drummer and percussionist. So I was really working with a specialist in the area because I didn't necessarily know all the sort of intricacies of these styles. So the sequence parts you hear are very, very authentic and given the thumbs up by someone who actually played these styles professionally. So the first one is the Beguine, and you can see there's some nice notes on here which are very easy to follow and which you can just work through fairly quickly and try tapping out and you notice this very characteristic bass drum and bass pattern of a half note and 2/4 notes. And here is the piece. There's what it looks like. And you'll recognize the rhythm of this immediately. You hear the sequence. Now, George, you want to just play us a few bars of the drums or drums and percussion only? Because what you can do is have the music in front of you and actually not have the piano part playing, obviously, and just play along with the percussion. and so on. You can see, so that's a very straightforward part. And then if we perhaps add the bass in, and so on. So, and what's nice is that the guitar part is really sort of an improvised part. The jazz guitar is actually jamming around the piano part. So you're getting what, and quite a lot of the book pieces in these books, so you're getting the piano piece, you're getting the basic style played by the rhythm section, but you're also getting some free element, which is actually what you would hope to hear if you had a live player playing with you and they're sort of jamming around what you were doing. So it's giving you the real feeling for what it's like, not just to play a style, but actually have it adumbrated, as they might say, by a third party. Now, this is the bolero, and it's related to the beginning, kind of a ballad. And claves play this, there's dum, 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 bum, bum, dum, 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 bum, bum. And you got parts for shaker and bongos. And if you played all these parts with some other players on percussion with the piano, you would end up with a very characteristic Latin American percussion section. Here, this is a lovely piano piece, by the way, just as a piece. And it's got this lovely throbbing accompaniment in the left hand of the piano, and also these rather wonderful chords, A minor sharp 7, A minor 7, D9, where you can see there's basically a note moving down the chord, an A, G sharp, a G, an F sharp, an F natural. So you get almost a chromatic scale moving through the chord, and you get this very sensual effect like this. So you can see that. Go on.
So you really have to become quite a split personality to handle independently those right and left hand rhythms.
That's right. You've got triplet quarter notes played at the same time as eighth notes in the left hand, which is quite fun. You can see the dancers gliding across the floor on this one, can't you? A lot of these are very much influenced by dance style. Well, they are dance styles, effectively. So that's bolero. Now, the famous old bossa nova, The Girl from Ipanema being perhaps the most famous example of this, it's got a little percussion score. If you look closely at it, the cabeza, da, 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 do, do, da, da, and then the triangle, ding, 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 ding. Yeah, I'm going ding, da, da, ding, ding, da, da, ding, ding. You can even do it vocally, like I'm just trying to do there, and the maracas are just playing straight eights. Put the bass drum on the bass with a very distinctive pattern, and again, immediately you've got the whole style sitting there in a percussion score. And then go to the piano part, and you don't see any of these parts, but what you're doing is you're hearing them on the sequence. And what's nice about this one as well, I think you're starting to get some very characteristic. I'm just going to switch again onto my piano for a second, and share screen, computer audio. There we go. Now, I'm just going to go to the right book here as well, my albums. Again, I'm showing you how quickly one can get from one to the other. This is the bossa nova, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So the bossa nova, so you got this lovely A major 7 inversion. And then A minor 7, all in inversion. And then the melody plays above that. So you can tell those are lovely chords to play in your left hand, and not too hard to play, but you're getting a very characteristic jazzy sound there.
Sorry, a little slow on the reshare here.
I rather like that 9/6 chord at the end there. It's a very distinctive sound as well. You can tell though this is getting into very interesting jazz chords throughout, the actual chord types and the inversions as well. Now, this is a merengue, and many of you won't have come across this style before. I don't know if I had until I actually researched this project. There's the percussion parts. So I'm just showing you the score. The next page shows even more percussion parts. So you've got a very complex 3 conga parts, 2 bongo parts, and then there's even another set of percussion parts as well. And then you go to the piano piece, and this is really interesting. The percussion parts are very complex, and the piano part itself is also very syncopated in 16th notes. So this is quite a fleet-fingered piece. I love the effect of it. Here's a merengue. So you could be in Mexico for this one. Let's move straight on. What, you're thinking of something, George?
Well, I was going to say, learning a piece like this, trying to break it down, take it at a slower speed.
Absolutely.
Oops. It does give you a chance to experience the space within the beats.
Exactly. Yes, because some people would find that it would run away in their fingers. Now, the Nenigo, I particularly like. This is one where you've got 3, 4, and 6/8. The famous example of this style is "I Want to Be in America" from West Side Story. And you've got, again, a big percussion chart here. A lot of the time, the percussion is really the heart and soul of this style. And then you've got a bass playing. You can see it's 3, 4, and 6/8. So there's 1, do, 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 do. So you've already got that sort of combination of the 2 time signatures. And here's what it looks like. With a rather nice cheeky spread chord at the end there on the piano as well. Now, this is the last example we're giving from this book and the last example from all 3 books. You can see there's a huge range of styles in these books and lots of really delightful little piano pieces to play in those styles with all this added bonus of all these other parts. This is, again, a big percussion score and a picture of the bass part, which is already quite complicated. And it says, I've actually put the notes are simple enough, but the rhythm is complex. And the piece shows how stops and fills can be used. So this is a very fearsome looking score, you might say. But again, if you're interested in exploring Latin styles, you do have to come up against this kind of syncopated 16th note style like Son Montuno. And a very sort of spirited ending to finish our little presentation on. Now, I should point out to you that at the moment, these wonderful backings are only available on SuperScore. The books are in preparation at the moment for a new edition, the covers of which you've seen at the beginning of the presentation. And backing tracks in audio form will be available on digital platforms. But this is a very nice little package where you can actually get the backings and the piano parts in liquid form available all in one place on SuperScore. George, you want to say anything more about that? So just in case people are unclear how to access SuperScore?
Absolutely. So you can get more information about SuperScore in general at TimeWarpTech.com, and you can see the breadth and depth of the music that's available for purchase in SuperScore. You cannot actually buy any of the music on the TimeWarp website. The music is purchased inside the app itself. And I might as well just show you here that if you were to tap the shopping cart button that you'll see in the top left area of the screen, you would go to the store where all the publishers are listed. The publications we've been showing today are from Boozy and Hawkes. And as you can see, there's quite a number of other albums by Chris that are available from Boozy in SuperScore. And if you were to go to the jazz album, you would be able to see a sample page, read a description. In my case, in light gray, it says this album's already installed and is up to date, but that's where you would see the price normally, and you would simply tap on that link and you would initiate the purchase process. If you were to want to try to find paper versions of the scores, you can do, of course, searches on the internet. I've provided the Boozy and Hawkes website where you can get information as well. And much about Chris, of course, can be found at his publishing company, 80dayspublishing.com, although not these albums, because they're Boozy and Hawkes albums.
Exactly.
Chris, Sherwin is asking, is the date yet known for when the updated versions of the books will be published? And while you answer that, I'll just mention, of course, that the SuperScore edition is the up-to-date version.
Yes, that's what's funny. The versions which you're looking at on SuperScore are the up-to-date versions. But I remember many years ago, I did a tour. I was working at the time, not for Roland, but doing a tour with Roland keyboards. And somebody heard the MIDI file backings for one of the microjazz books and said to me, "This is great. Is it available in book form?" This is back in the 80s. And I thought that's interesting how somebody could see a product and think, gosh, I wonder if it's available as a book. So these are actually already available as books, but what you can't get at the moment is the backings. The book will direct you to where you can get the backings once they're out. I think they're probably going to be out, in the next 3 months or so quite soon. But it is still worth considering looking at these as products within the SuperScore medium and then getting the book subsequently so that you've got both, because in fact, it's quite nice to be able to leaf through the book in its own way as well. It's a different approach to it. But I thought it was fascinating in fact that this is somebody could say to me, as they've asked here, are they available as books? I've got the same question has come up in the questions here. And in broad terms, yes, but not the full package yet, because the books haven't had the MIDI file disks attached to them for decades, and the books are available at the moment, but not with the backings. Not that I want to de-emphasize how nice the piano pieces are to play. You can learn a lot about the styles through playing just the piano pieces as well. So don't discount the books as products as well.
So Chris, Paul Jan is asking a question. How did you make your MIDI backing tracks? What software did you use? And before you answer that, I'll just mention that these are MIDI-based accompaniments. And if you're connected to a digital piano that has general MIDI sounds, you can output the sounds right through the speakers of your piano using its internal sounds.
And they sound terrific.
But everything you've heard today are from the virtual instruments that are actually built into SuperScore, which are way higher quality than what was available back in the 1990s when these were originally recorded. And Chris, you might want to comment about the software that was used in answer to the question.
Well, the truth of the matter is the software that was used for these was Cubase. just one of the sequence of programs that was available at the time. What was interesting is that the person I worked with most was a wonderful musician called Frank Misen, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago. But he was a wonderful multi-instrumentalist. He played very high proficiency level on guitar, on keyboards, on bass, on drums, on trombone. And he also played all the sort of folk guitar things as well. But so the parts you're hearing, you notice there's a lot of pitch bend and that sort of thing. They're very characteristically programmed so that you've got things which sound like the real instruments playing. So we used a particular software to do it, but I mainly used a wonderful programmer whose legacy lives on with these backings.
And today, you and I have done further edits using Digital Performer, which is a Mac and PC editor.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people who I still work with use Cubase still, or they use Digital Performer, they use Pro Tools. There's all sorts of mediums for doing these things. That's not really so relevant anymore, if you like. What's relevant is what you do with them.
And I see that Lisa Lett is asking what the prices are for the essential guides in the app, and I believe that it's $16.99 for each volume.
Yeah, which includes, of course, all the backings and all the piano parts.
Which is pretty amazing value when you consider that the volumes are what, 24, 28, and 34 pieces respectively.
Exactly. And also when you look at the price of books, it's not a bad alternative method.
Absolutely.
Well, I can certainly attest to using SuperScore myself with these essential guides. I took a look at them last fall after you guys did the first presentation that mentioned these, and it's really great to see the next two coming out as well. What are the next two that are just coming out? Is it Latin and Jazz?
Latin and Jazz, yeah. Well, they're all available now on this
SuperScore.
Yeah,
in SuperScore, yeah, right, of course.
And Nellie's asking, is the link available for purchase? So what you have to do is you have to go to the App Store on your iPad and download the SuperScore Music app. It's a free download from the App Store. Then you have what you can see on the screen right now, and you tap the shopping cart button, and you will need to then locate Boozy and Hawks, and you will find the albums there.
and you can also find descriptions and sample tracks as well. So you've got some things which show you what they sound like and look like.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris or George? Feel free to throw them in the Q&A or in the chat box. Thanks everyone for participating, and thanks both of you for such a thorough presentation. It's amazing to see all these different styles and see you capture them in these small little bites, really. Well,
I'm still very proud of these books, even though they've been up, as I said, probably 25, 30 years, but they're still kind of under the surface in terms of market awareness, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, you can always go to other sources and even like Wikipedia and read about one of these styles, but it's an entirely different experience to actually immerse yourself in the styles through your musical fingers on a keyboard, participating in the sound with the backing tracks.
And be able to play the piano pieces, which are probably peaking at grade 4. I mean, in other words, they're not too hard.
The other thing that I found as a teacher with these backing tracks has been that even when the rhythms are complicated, by listening to the backing tracks and the piece as a whole, you get yourself into a groove and into a mindset, and you start to feel the rhythms, which is a whole different experience from just sort of mathematically counting them out and figuring out when to play this particular note. And
exactly.
I found that my students can adapt to these rhythms and pick them up very naturally because they just sound so natural in the playback.
Mm-hmm. Okay, not seeing any other questions at the moment. We're just past the top of the hour. So we look forward to hearing you both again next week, next Friday. If anyone hasn't registered, please register. Find those links online or through your email inbox, or duet or microjazz duet collections through the SuperScore app. It's going to be very similar to today, but amazing to see now that we're going to have backing tracks for these duets that Chris has created. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks both of you for the presentation today. If anyone has any questions, feel free to email me anyways, derek@conservatorycanada.ca, and I can connect you with either George or Chris, whether it's in regard to Chris's music or the SuperScore app. and hope everyone has a great weekend. And we'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.